Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna ask, do you have a child with early onset?
I do. Yeah. My daughter, Alexa, is 8 turning 9 next month. Yeah. And she's had it since birth. And she actually has type 2, which is kind of less common.
Yeah. So does it run in the family at all, or
No, she's the first one.
so the constant theme?
Is it? So what about you both?
I have an 11-year-old, and she has 1 and 2. And
Both?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They actually say it's pretty common in early onset. It's just once they find one type, they
Ah,
don't go looking for the other type.
interesting.
So the more they've been researching the kids, the more they've been coming up with more kids across the world that have both. And that's one of the
Huh.
reasons why it's a little more aggressive.
Huh.
So yeah, but the whole family has been tested right down to eggs and sperm, and nothing that they can find.
Wow. That is
But
really
I haven't,
interesting.
again, a lot of it is probably my lack of knowledge and the fact that I couldn't pass a biology course if it was like
Well, yeah.
my life depended on it. So
Hasn't it felt so many times through this, like, oh my God, why didn't I try harder in those classes?
Right. Well, if I could go back, I'd want to be a physical therapist. I'm like, why wasn't I?
right, right. But then again, I don't know if I could really connect all those muscles. Would
No.
probably fail that too.
So,
Wow.
how you said just a daughter that's 8.
Mhm.
How severe is she?
I think it depends on who you ask. Like physically, she can walk, so she's not in a wheelchair, but she has a lot of really significant cognitive issues. So she just, she's 8, but she probably is cognitively more like a 4-year-old.
And do they say that's part of the disease, or is
They
that
they
related or not related?
they say it's all related. So you guys know the weird thing with this is it's very different in how it plays out. And it may well be that in like 5 years we find out actually she has something else. We just didn't realize it.
Yep.
But right now they're saying that they think it's all the same, whatever processes or something related to the underlying FSHD. So
How's her hearing?
fine, like all of those kinds of markers, like hearing, heart. What are some of the other ones? Vision.
Pulmonary, vision.
Pulmonary is lousy, really lousy. So
Really?
she's had, in her young life, especially in the 0 to 5 period, she had several hospitalizations, like 4 or 5 with pneumonias and RSVs that went south. And those have left her with some bronchial scarring. And so it's technically it's called bronchiectasis. It's a form of lung disease. So we have her on all these like daily, pretty aggressive pulmonary treatments, like everything from inhalers to a vest machine and a cough assist, and she sleeps with a BiPAP. So that's kind of our experience of the disease, is both the kind of cognitive impacts and then all this pulmonary work. And then she also just gets super tired. So basic things like walking a few blocks to school, that's a lot.
Like tired, like she needs to take a nap, or tired she just needs to sit down?
Both. She takes a nap every day, and she just doesn't have the stamina to do physical stuff for very long.
Did Sam get tired, Allie?
Sam does get tired. When he was walking, it was worse. Now that he's older and in a wheelchair more, he's still tired, but not as tired as he used to be when he was younger. But he has some pulmonary issues too. He had a lot of RSV and things like that when he was young. But I think it's just because he wasn't strong enough to cough, to have a good hearty cough. So it just kind of sat in there. So I learned, before I even knew about all the FSH stuff, that, if he got a cold and it got in his lungs, to take him in right away and get him on the albuterol and stuff like that, and kind of keep his lungs clear. And he has a cough assist machine now too. He doesn't use it much now that he's older, but now because his pulmonary function is still low, we're using it kind of opposite of what it's intended for. So twice a day, he just inhales just to stretch out his lungs, and get a good inhale.
Right.
And he doesn't cough, but we just do that to try and exercise those lungs and keep his lung function trying to get it, increase it. Right now it's at 40%. And we're trying to increase it by doing that. So we're going to do that for about a year and go back and check it again and see if it makes any difference.
How long has he been doing that?
He just started. So he had spinal fusion surgery in 2020, and his lung function was like at 50% then. And they said that it would help because his spine was curving and twisting. He was putting pressure on his heart and lungs. So the spinal fusion was supposed to help stretch all that out, but it really hasn't made a difference. So now we're trying this and we're going to go back and check it. So we'll see. But they did say that you'd be surprised how functional you are at a low percentage. They just don't want it to go down. So they're like 40% sounds scary, but really he can function fine with that for a long time as long as it doesn't keep decreasing, is what they tell me. So
how old was he when he was diagnosed?
6, and he's 16 now.
Okay.
And he went into a wheelchair full time around 12.
Okay. And how did that all come about?
Like getting in the chair.
Yeah.
So it's almost the same as like with Kristen's daughter, Kate. She's 5 years behind Sam, but so he was diagnosed at 6. He got AFOs. He had foot drop on his right foot. It was around 7 or 8. And then he had another AFO, and he had a couple surgeries on his foot for tendon transfers. And then probably around 11, he could walk around the house and crawl a little bit, but he couldn't really do distances. So he started using a chair for distances, and then he just couldn't. Now he can't stand or walk. So it's almost like it's slow, but it's not. It's like it creeps up on you, but then it goes really fast.
Yeah. Yep.
He has hearing loss, but Kate doesn't have hearing loss, right?
No, Kate doesn't have hearing loss. Kate's in glasses, but they've stabilized her eyesight. They check her every year for coats, and no signs have come up. She's got a clean, since she's been in the glasses, her eyes have been stable. So, so she hasn't had that. Hers is more, her symptoms started showing. She was also diagnosed she was 6, but she was almost 7. But her diagnosis was more that she had this way back. And so we thought there was something wrong with the posture, and her spine was fine and everything was fine. And she couldn't really run. She never could really run. She, tried, but because they were so little, it was just like, oh, she just has to catch up with her peers.
Right.
So it just became more prevalent as they were getting older. She wasn't progressing physically like the other kids. But it was, like Ali said, when she now she's on a walker and she uses a little trike for long distance. It was slow, but it was quick. Like now when I look back, I saw all the signs of her losing her ability to walk. And she even said to me one day, probably 4 months before she just couldn't really walk anymore on her own, she said to me, I've got this greatest fear that I'm not going to be able to walk. And I was like, oh, that's silly. I didn't read into it. I didn't take it to the fact that she was actually crying out for help, but didn't really know how to say the words without it being, maybe it was real for her. Maybe it was just that she didn't know how else to express it. But so she then claimed she had some sort of injury. I don't know how she had an injury, but she said in the back of her left calf just was hurting so much. And so she was like, I can't walk on it, or hurts too much. It hurts too much. And that was it. She never walked again.
Wow. And how old was she?
She was 10.
And she's 11 now? So this is pretty new for you guys.
Oh yeah. This is, I called Allie. I'm like, what do I do? How do I navigate this?
Oh my God, life.
That's tough. Hi, Julie. Welcome. I'm not sure. So we're doing things a little bit different this meeting. We're just kind of chatting. We don't have a guest speaker this meeting. Next month, I'm going to have a geneticist come on and talk to us about the genetics. And also, you guys have heard about losmapimod, the drug that's going into phase 3. Have you heard about that? So she's also going to talk to us specifically about how losmapimod works and how it affects the genes, and then just answer questions from parents about the genetics of FSHD, which are super complicated. Just when I think I understand, then I don't. So, yes. So that would be next month. And then May, we may have either someone from Fulcrum speak, or I'm going to see if Dr. Butterfield may come on and speak to us. I'm leaving for the MOVE study tomorrow. I'm driving to Utah tomorrow to take Sam.
How's that tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is that?
So there's a trial out right now. It's called the MOVE trial. And it's the first one that's been open to pediatrics and people that are non-ambulatory. And basically it's to gather like natural history information. And it's just movements, kind of range of motion stuff. But it's really important for us to get the pediatric and the early onset population into this MOVE study, because there's so little information on them. And especially with losmapimod coming on in phase 3, and now we have Chip Wilson, who just donated or just put $100 million toward, pushing a cure. We want to make sure that once a treatment is found, then it is very quickly thereafter prescribable to the pediatrics, because right now it's not. Like if losmapimod is approved tomorrow, it's not approved for kids. Right. And just like what you've heard, Kristen and I say, if we would have had a treatment when our kids were 6, 7, 8, they'd probably still be walking now. Yeah. Or they'd be walking a lot longer, because even if it doesn't cure it, but it slowed down the progression, I'm confident that my son would still be walking. And I think Kristen feels the same way. So it's very important that we get this data for the pediatrics, so that they can open a trial right away, and then we can get that drug to the kids. Because I can't imagine having a kid that's 6, 7 and watching them deteriorate, and there's a drug out there and you just can't get it prescribed. Like that would make me crazy. Like I don't know what I would do. So do you want to add to that, Kristen?
Yeah, so I actually went to the Fulcrum offsite last Monday and interacted and talked with the whole team. They wanted to hear from a caregiver / patient side of the viewpoints of life. And I've been involved because I was on the clinical trial advisory board for the drug. So I've been involved with them for the past 3+ years. And so they're super positive. They're so excited. They really think they've got this. They really think that this is going to be the first drug that can hold patients in a holding pattern, or at least slow it down by years. And they're super, super, super positive and excited about it. And they wouldn't be, because they are a public company, and for them to spew positivity is not a bright thing when you're being traded on the stock market and giving false hope out there. So I do, and they've always played it very close to the chest. They've never been overly positive one way or the other. So it was really great to feel that vibe. Not that they came out and said this is a done deal, but they were like, this is the COVID has helped them solidify their findings, because they've had to extend the trial by an extra year. So they now have an entire year of data, and 98% of the patients who were in the clinical trial opted on to stay on, and they had the ability to come off. So if these patients weren't feeling like this wasn't doing anything and it was just hope without hope, they wouldn't have continued taking a pill 3 times a day. So they they're just really excited for the clinical trial 3s to start. Kids are not on the radar with regards to when, how, and why. So if you think about drug development from the standpoint of what we all know, which is the COVID vaccine, it went through the adults, and then it took another year or longer before our kids actually got it. That would be the same case here, but even worse. We don't have the money to run trials, and we don't have the back history on the kids. So we are missing 2 components. Now, I have started conversations with Solve FSHD, which is the Chip Wilson. So I'm waiting to set up a meeting with them. They agree that the kids could be a major part of the solution, because their progression is faster, and that if we can get natural history data on these kids, then it helps them figure out a clinical trial pathway. Right now, they couldn't go to the FDA and say, this is our endpoint for kids, because they don't understand the progression. There's only been documentation on the adult onset of FSHD. So we are working way in the rears, and we're way behind the 8 ball with figuring out how to make sure we get these kids into the conversation sooner than later. Because after this drug goes through, there's another 12 that's starting to get ready for clinical trials. We've got 3 of them just this year that are going to launch, and they are open to conversations about the kids, but they're like, but we don't have data.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked with the president of Fulcrum about this, and he is all ears. He's understanding, and he has asked me to speak with the woman who's in their regulatory area. I also have reached out to 3 other pharmaceuticals for their regulatory area, and then also hoping that Solve FSHD, the team that Chip Wilson has put together, has some regulatory behind them as well. So I'm hoping between all of that we can start to figure out the roadmap, and with all of Allie's research, where she's talking to companies that are going to be able to take back data, all of our kids' medical records, and load them into a system that gives some sort of idea of what is the progression, what age, we can start seeing consistency in the medical records from, even though they've been collected differently, there's AI software out there that can take the data and somehow sort it and make some sort of summary of it. But the first place that we can all do right now as parents is get the kids into this MOVE study that Allie's taking Sam to tomorrow. Okay. And that is, it's only going to help us from this date going forward, but at least it's getting us moving, right? It's getting us, and it's getting the kids on the radar, because now then they will also be, that means they're part of the national registry, right, Allie?
I don't know that
they'll get at the same time. You can sign up at the same time, so that then they're on the radar, right?
So I talked to Dr. Katz about, because there is so little information on early onset, and she's very interested in the pediatric side of things. And the thing that she said to me that she wanted me to emphasize to all the parents was the number one thing you have to do is get your kid in that U of R registry. And it's very easy to do. It's paper-based right now, but it's very simple. And then once a year you update it, and then they could pull the data from that and use that for natural history, get them in the U of R registry. There is a registry within the FSHD Society, and get them in the MOVE study. Then we'll start working on the retrospective of getting parents to send their actual records to a company that will sort of mine that. And then we'll have a prospective from this day forward and a retrospective. So like with my son, I have 10 years of data. Like, that's really valuable. That's going to save us a lot of time. There's other parents out there that have a lot of years of data as well. And like Kristen says, the kids have consistently gone to the doctor at least every 6 months. So we have a lot of information. We just need to figure out how to get it out. Mm-hmm. So we got a lot of things working right now, but we just need the parents to help us out and get all this information. If you're close to a MOVE study, you're in Berkeley, right? Mm-hmm. So Stanford, I think.
Is that right?
Stanford, I think, is a participant.
Okay.
In the MOVE study. And it's really easy. So just go to clinicaltrials.gov and type in FSHD, and then the MOVE study will come up, and then it'll have a list of contacts. Just email them. I've just gone through all this. Kristen just went through it. Tomorrow, when I go through the appointment, I'll come back and I'll give you guys a report on how all that went. But you just contact them. They'll email you back and say, hey, when can you make it? And then they'll set an appointment, and it's very easy to do. And we really, really, really need the kids. Dr. Katz said there's only 30 kids under the age of 18 right now in the U of R registry, and we need more.
We've registered at it's University of Rochester that has the registry, right? Yeah. So we did that years ago. Good. And it's been kind of radio silence. I thought that would be the vessel where people would be like, oh, you have a kid and we have a study. Let's send you an email.
Well, yeah, there really hasn't been any studies for kids.
Oh, all right.
This MOVE study, so that's the thing. It is sort of the vessel, and
they were, and until Allie started speaking up, they really weren't pushing kids to get into the MOVE study. And then all of a sudden it dawned on them, like, hey, yeah, you're right. When she started to say, hey, we need data on kids, and they're like, well, why aren't they in the MOVE study? It's like, because nobody said we should have them in the MOVE study. Everything's been adult driven. So this came about because of Allie starting to poke around and ask questions about what are we doing about the kids. And again, this is one thing that we can do immediately, but it's not solving the back problem. It's just solving the future problem. And we also need to get the kids that are now 30 that were, were diagnosed early into the study. So that they have, even kids that are 30 today, if they have the ability to show where they are today and when they were diagnosed, that gives some information about the progression from that standpoint. So, that's the first and foremost. The other thing that came out of my conversation was that, early onset is a misunderstood side of the disease. And I don't want to say that it's a different disease, but it acts differently in the kids from the adults, from the way it manifests and the fact that it's so much faster. And they're really not that aware of it. And so, when I told Caitlin's story, they all know her and they've known of her, but they were surprised not seeing her for 2 years, where we are today from what they saw 2 years ago when she was in visiting with the board. So, it's the regulatory people that I've spoke to said that there needs to be more papers from scientists and doctors written about it. So Allie's been running with that one.
Hi, Julie. Do you want to join our conversation? Kind of tell us where you're from, where you're at, and how old your child is. And
I've been driving, so I've been
okay.
video off, and I stopped for a few minutes. I have like 5 minutes until my kids hop in the car, and then I'll probably mute again. So yes, and 2 months ago, I guess I was on one of the calls and I heard about the MOVE study. So my son, we're going to go Friday to University of Southwestern in Dallas. It's about a 6-hour drive, but we have an appointment there. So yeah, my son, he's 16 and he was diagnosed when he was 10, I guess. So almost 6 years ago. I guess it'll be 6 years this summer. And so y'all are much better parents because I don't have any data on my son. We took him to a neurologist right when he was diagnosed. And this was I live in South Texas in Corpus Christi. And this neurologist pretty much said, there's nothing we can do. I've never seen anybody with this. I have no idea, but you can come see me once a year if you want. Well, I was not super impressed. I was the one who told him I thought my kid had FSHD.
Oh my goodness.
And he said to me, raise your arms. My son raised his arm straight up and he said he didn't have it. He completely dismissed me. So then we did the assessment and he said, Mom, I think you might be right. We did the labs and he was off the chart. It was obvious. And it came back, for sure. And so I just was not impressed with him. And my husband and I, he's talked to a lot of different people. We went to Boston and to Las Vegas to the 2 FSHD Society meetings. We try to learn as much as we can, but we take him to the pediatrician, but that's about it. So I've been feeling the need to have him see a neurologist. And I tried to get him in to see Dr. Trivedi, who's in Texas, this past summer. And they kind of dismissed me, said, no, she only sees adults. Well, now, lo and behold, Friday, Dr. Trivedi will see you, is what they told me. And that's because we're going to the MOVE study. And even though she doesn't treat pediatrics, she will see us. And so, so I don't have a ton of data on him, but we're going Friday and we'll do the study. And my son, I was so stubborn as a child and I'm getting my payback with him, but I guess stubbornness is a good thing if you have FSHD because he's just so stinking stubborn. And so, but when he was agreeable to do this study, being 16 and I thought, if he's on board and I didn't have to twist his arm to do this, I didn't want to make him go and just be miserable for 4 hours, but he's getting an understanding about the disease. And so anyway, I'm excited, anxious, but excited just to have, getting to be a part of this. So I'm glad y'all kind of encouraged us to do that.
Good for you. And I'm glad you got in and I hope you can, I hear this a lot of neurologists, they don't know much about it. So if you can get to a CTRN, one of those clinics, they're the ones that are most knowledgeable about FSH. A lot of neurology, like I just had, I've seen the same neurologist for 10 years and she still doesn't know that much. I go there and I fill her in and all the latest stuff. Like she's like, oh, really? Losmapimod. She didn't know anything about it. So
Yeah.
it's a little frustrating, but unfortunately it's very common that you run into neurologists who really just are like, whatever,
Right.
But I'm glad you're in the move set. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy to hear
Yeah.
that
All right.
somebody heard
You've
us.
gotten four. You've gotten four since you started this.
Feels so good.
If we only knew how many kids there were out there, Allie, we could give a percent to it.
I know. So thank you. Thank you for going.
Yeah.
And yeah, to contact Stanford, and I hope you can get your child in as
Yeah,
well.
totally, I
Because
will.
I'm very, like what Kristen was saying, I'm more hopeful now than I ever have been that there's going to be a treatment pretty soon, like within a couple of years. And that's exciting. And we have to get the kids involved.
Yeah, I mean, I went to a couple years ago before COVID. We went to Ohio to Children's Hospital out there where Dr. Harper, they have it in the mouse model, and it's the cure. It's the one and done. And so we need something to hold our kids steady until that comes.
There's
What is
also
that?
one.
Kristen, what is the one and done?
It's a gene therapy. So it's, is it SMA, Allie, that has the drug already?
Yes.
So SMA is where it's the spine and the kids don't develop at all. They can't move their legs or their arms, and most of them actually do not live long lives. And it's a shot that they give, and it is bringing movement back to SMA patients who are later in their lifespan. But then the kids who have gotten the shot are now 3 and 4, and they're running around as if they don't have muscular dystrophy at all. It's the same concept, and it's a shot that they put in, and it's super complex, and there's a lot of decision making that you have to go through in order to go through and getting one of these shots. So when Dr. Hummel was on a few calls ago with the parents, he talked about how it's a one and done, and if it doesn't work, it could never work. So it depends on how your personal immune system reacts to when this thing goes into your body as to if it works. And then if it doesn't work, then it's something that you can't go back and do again. It starts going way above my scientific capabilities in talking about this stuff. It's super complex stuff. There's also another company here that has a similar drug that they're going into clinical trials with in 2022 here in Waltham, Mass. That is, again, they call it the super fancy pants drugs. It's those shots that are one and done. And it's just, what it's doing is it's trying to reprogram the DNA. So where the kids have their repeats, it's going to say, no, that we don't do that. And so it starts to filter through the body, and the DNA starts to reprogram itself from that side of things. So Fulcrum's drug just is a synthetic drug, if you will. So you take it and it just your body's not changing. It's just trying to block the muscle from turning to fat. Whereas these other drugs are more reprogramming the body so that the DUX4 is kept where it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Julie, is your son the only one in your family that has FSH?
Yes, no one else has been tested. My husband and I both, whenever we found out 5-6 years ago, we just studied every person in our family, from our parents to aunts and uncles, and we cannot figure out anybody. We have 4 children in total. Noah is a twin. His twin is asymptomatic, very athletic, 30 pounds heavier, plays sports. Noah, has no muscle and winged scapula, can't smile. So Noah is symptomatic and positive. But my other, 3 children have no other symptoms. And so we've just chosen right now to not test anybody. And my husband and I have just chosen to not test ourselves right now. We may change our mind eventually, but so we're assuming it's just a genetic mutation that just occurred, and that it's not anyone else in the family, but I guess we could be wrong. But as for the moment, that's all we know.
I did want to mention that the FSHD Society is doing a genetic testing initiative. Right now, it's just in the trial phase, like in the testing phase. Actually, I'm going to be tested. I'm like one of the guinea pigs, if you will. Like I'm going to go through all the testing and then report back how it went, because it's the same thing. Like it's not in my family at all, but there's something called a mosaic gene. It's kind of like a shadow gene or something that, or I don't know. Anyway, they're going to test for all that stuff as well. But if you want to get tested, anybody in the family, and it's free of charge when it comes online, and I believe it's scheduled to come online in June. That they want 1,000 participants. So if you have other children, or if yourself, if you want to get tested, there'll be some more information coming out on the genetic testing initiative, probably June timeframe.
Okay. Yeah, no, we'll keep that in mind. But I have a car full now, so I'm going to put it back on mute.
Okay. All right. Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, I wanted to ask two major things, I guess, are happening in the world of FSHD right now, right? One is, I guess there's been a lot of development in the CRISPR method. I was just starting to do some research on that. And specifically in FSHD2, there's some clinical trials going on right now. They just passed the mouse trials and then moved on. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
I've been reading a little bit about it, but it's something that is above my knowledge of trying to decipher what it all means. So if you've got that type of information, we are all ears.
Me too. I did find an interesting article on it that kind of broke it down to like my level, so I can understand it, with pictures and all that fun stuff. So I will share that with you guys. But
yeah, please
the
do.
other thing is there any potential for a partnership with the $100 million that was donated by the founder of Lululemon for FSHD, because he's been diagnosed with it. He's 60, in his mid to late 60s, and is putting that towards it. Is there anything we can do to help reach out to them to funnel money to support this group?
So Mark Stone's been talking to him for a bit. I know they have some sort of relationship, and actually, Kristen, go ahead. And Kristen's reached out to him as well.
Well, the FSHD Society has a relationship that they actually got funding from the organization to finish off the clinical trial network. So they, so Chip Wilson actually funded $2.8 million to the FSH Society for the mission of making sure that there's enough sites for clinical trials to actually operate, because his mission for Solve FSHD is that he wants to make it so that the clinical trial pathway is cleared. And so people have been saying, oh, we're starting from zero with research. That if you really read what he's doing, clearing the pathways for the clinical trials. It's taking too long to get the number of drugs we have ready to go into clinical trials. And one is because we don't have enough patients diagnosed and genetically diagnosed and ready to go for the number of drugs that are out there and that need the testing to go on. So he did give and fund the FSHD Society to finish off the clinical trial networks that they were working on, so that they can set them up both in Canada and in the US. And then the other part that I did stalk as much as I could to try and get an answer from every avenue I could find. I am a recruiter by trade, so I put my efforts into full action to get a response from this Solve FSHD, and they did respond. And so I'm working with, this was just in the past few days, so I'm working to try and set up some time for Allie and I to chat with them. They agreed that they wanted to find out what we had going on. They wanted to learn about the parent community, because they do believe that this is a pathway that could help with drug discovery and effectiveness quicker, because our kids have more of the toxin running around their bodies. So, more to come on that. But the fact that I got a response within 24 hours of sending out my 17 emails to every address I could find was a pretty promising, promising response.
Thank you for pushing that. That's great.
Guys, do we have a sense of what the numbers are? When I was looking at this 5 years ago, I felt like Alexa was one of literally 5 kids that I could identify that were type 2.
They just keep coming and coming, right, Allie?
Yeah. So I think type 2, I don't know the numbers. Early onsets anywhere between 5 to 10% of an already rare disease.
Mhm.
However, I'm glad you brought this up. There are a lot of kids, and like Julie alluded to earlier, that the parents know they have FSH. It's been in their family for a long time, and they've just not been diagnosed. So for whatever reason, it's a personal reason, you know, everybody has to make their own decision on when and how they're going to get their kids diagnosed. But it does complicate things a little bit as far as numbers, like how many kids really have it. And and again, I'm not going to pressure anybody to diagnose their kid. You know, everybody has to find their own way. But it does get complicated as far as if there is a treatment, they're not going to get the drug prescribed to them if they don't have a diagnosis. I think there's a lot of things as far as the education community, getting the resources and things they need. If they don't, some like IEPs and things like that will take a clinical diagnosis, but I think they're missing out on some resources and things if they don't get diagnosed. And then it's just hard for us to get the natural history and to get all that and to get a clinical trial ready population when there's a lot of kids out there that are not officially been diagnosed. So that's a really hard question to answer. And we're pushing really hard. That's why we want to get all the kids that we know of in the registry.
We can find out what is the population we're dealing with.
Right. And and Kristen has asked the question many times, how many kids do we need for a trial? And it's really not that many. It's like 25.
Wow.
So if we can get 25 kids, which I personally know of 25 kids, you know, maybe they're not completely diagnosed, but I know their parents. We can get to 25 kids if we can just get the parents to get the diagnosis and get them into the right spot. And again, it is complicated, and it costs some money out of pocket. Like for me to go to Utah, you know, it costs some money, and it's not easy, but it's important, you know. And like I said, everybody has to make their own decision about diagnosis, but there's a big population out there that is not currently diagnosed.
A big barrier when we were getting started 5 years ago was the genetic testing, because it was so prohibitively expensive, and we ended up getting it comped for ways I don't even fully understand. The company comped it assuming the insurance would pay them back, never did. So
interesting. Yeah, we went to Rochester, and they put her into a study. I don't even know what the study was, but that took care of the diagnosis. They actually paid us. And so the thing with the numbers is we don't have a full sense of what it is. They've got some predictions, but they don't know if those are actually really real. But Allie started this group 3 months ago, Allie? 4 months ago?
Yeah, about 4 months ago.
And there's 250 people that are registering. So there's a demand out there, and whether people are actually engaged or not, that's the question that we don't know. And we don't know if they're understanding and listening to the drug development process. The process of drug development is so incredibly complex and long and hard. You know, and it's a marathon. It's not something that's going to be solved tomorrow, and neither is getting these drugs over the finish line, right? The reason why, if you read the articles from Chip Wilson, his biggest thing is like, you know, we are in the place that this could turn into the dead zone. Like, we've got an interest from pharmaceuticals. If we don't start getting some of these drugs over the line, we could just get abandonment as fast as we got the action, because if they can't get them over the line. So you know, so that's where it becomes all of us being focused on patients while we move it forward and become part of the solution.
Makes sense.
So I had a couple questions in the chat. Rajandra, is that how you pronounce your name? Can you hear me? She asked, can you guys see the chat? She asked whether CoQ10 and creatine does any good for the body, and if there's an FSHD society in India. So I'm going to try and answer this debate. I don't know about the FSHD society in India. I don't believe there is, Kristen.
I don't think there is. I'll look, but I don't think there is.
But you're always welcome to email us and be involved with us. There's a lot of information, anecdotal information about supplements that's always on Facebook and things. And I have tried lots of things with my son just to see if it, you know, kind of throwing things at the wall to see which sticks. So it depends on who you ask about the supplements. I have had my son on creatine before, and it didn't make a marked difference. I don't know that it made him any worse, or if he maybe held steady a little bit. And some people are swearing by creatine and also testosterone. I'm not going to give that to my son, testosterone. I did experiment with the creatine a little bit. CoQ10, I think, mostly helps with your heart and circulation. So I don't think it'll hurt you, but I don't know that it's going to make any sort of marked difference in the disease. But again, I don't know. We're going to try and get a nutritionist on here probably in the next couple of months, someone who knows a lot about supplements, just to ask them those questions, because and at the FSHD 360 Connect that's in Orlando in June, I'm on the committee for that, and they are going to have a nutritionist there, and a lot of people would ask about supplements. So maybe once I come back from that, I might have some more information. But right now, the best thing I can tell you is I don't think it'll hurt them, but I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference. And you do need to make sure about the side effects, like creatine. You got to make sure you're drinking a lot of water. It can hurt the liver. You got to make sure, you're kind of cycling on and off of it. I gave my son magnesium, but then he started getting bloody noses, and I'm sure that's what it was. So you just have to kind of make the best decision for your own child. But I don't know of any kind of supplement that's really going to make a huge difference. And again, there are probably people out there that are going to disagree with me, but from my own experience, I haven't, and I've tried a few. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us all the way from India. Does anybody, so we always talk about research and we always want to share the latest information. We'll continue to do that. We wanted to talk about schools and IEPs and things like that. Does anybody have any questions about any of that sort of thing? And maybe some of us that have some older kids have gone through it, how to navigate any of that kind of stuff. Is everybody getting what they need as far as the school is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm dropping back to sports. We worked with our school, our elementary school, for my 9-year-old, time 6-year-old was diagnosed, and they've been really beneficial. But there's other schools that have not had that experience, so it's a really big push. And I would definitely advise that if you are connected with one of the children's hospitals or one of them, the studies, those individuals can a lot of times help support you get the information that you need, because the IED program it's owed to our children. It's not, I don't know how to say this, forgive me.
It's legally mandated.
It's mandated, exactly, right? So, sometimes you have to fight for it to get it done right, and be the proponent for your child and say, no, they're owed this, you got to make sure you do this. I know my son struggled with writing, handwriting. So, we were able to work with the school, and they got him a laptop and, working with type. So, but just be the champion with it and work with it. And it is, like you said, it's legally mandated. It's your child's right to have that. So work with the school counselors at the schools and make sure that they give you what you need there. Be your child's champion.
Right. And so some of the things, there's 13 different categories that will qualify you for an IEP. Orthopedic impairment is one of them. Also speech, language, and hearing. And I know a lot of kids have speech impediments and hearing loss with FSHD. So if they're not orthopedically impaired yet, they can qualify for IEP through the other two. But it's like some of the things that have been helpful for Sam over the years have been extra time on things. The writing, like you mentioned, extra time with writing, using Dragon Dictate, things like that. And now that he's in high school, extra time on like taking the ACT test and things like that, that has to be in his IEP. And just making sure that you would think in this day and age that everything's ADA compliant, and it's not. His high school, they had to install handicap doors, the buttons to open the doors. And they're continually breaking because the kids walk by and smack them or whatever, just things like that, that if you have an IEP and you have a team that will help you get those sort of resources, physical therapy, occupational therapy. So I would encourage, like you said, I think eventually you will need you will find some of it helpful, especially the extra time and the maybe turning in assignments late. I don't like that because if I give my son extra time turning in late, he will take advantage of it whether he can do it or not because he is a 16-year-old boy, but just extra time and getting things done. So those are all pretty standard things that are in IEPs. And like I said, yeah, it's legally mandated, and they have to follow it. So get in there, and if your child's struggling, they can find ways to make it better. Even just getting things out of backpacks, helping them just with all the physical things. So, and most schools are very, very good about it. And they want your kid to be successful.
Yeah, we've had a great experience with our schools, and in part because Alexa's disabilities are so cognitive. She's such an obvious candidate, so she's not one of these kids who falls through the cracks. So she has, anyway, all the ologists and all the therapists. So we feel grateful for all the supports. I kind of look at when she turns 18, oh my God, what happens then when all those supports kind of change, but for now we're good.
Right. And I'm sort of looking at that now because Sam's getting a little bit older, but a lot of that translates over. I'm already looking at when he goes to college, if he can get some attendant care, someone to come in and help him. And I'm already starting to look at that kind of thing. And there are things in place, but you just have to fight for everything. Definitely. So any other questions? Do you have any other information that we haven't shared with people, or Kristen, on all the updates?
No, I mean, I think for the updates, I mean, it's really, it's everyone. I love that pretty much everyone here has gotten their kids moving into the MOVE study. So that's very encouraging. And I think that it's just, the next step is trying to figure out the past data, which you're working hard on, Ellie. So I appreciate your time and efforts with fighting software companies from that perspective.
Hopefully we can get that done, and hopefully it's easier than we think.
Yeah. So, and then it's a matter of figuring out, once we have that answer, then it's also learning from the regulators, which we will be working on at the same time, of what is it that the pharmaceuticals need from these medical records, and how many kids, what do they need? They were making it sound like if we could just get the data into these AI databases, that they would be able to decipher what they needed from that, because they just need one endpoint, just like they're using the movable
Reachable workspace
for the current trial. They just need one data point that they can point to that would show success for the kids. And so that's what we need to figure out from the past data.
Again, I'm going to mention the University of Rochester registry. Make sure your kids are in there. That's where they're going to go first, I think. And the FSHD Society has a registry as well.
Yeah,
for all ages.
The more we were barking at the doctors and the more we're telling doctors, like I have been hounding Caitlin's entire teams. She does Rochester and she does Children's Hospital in Boston. I've been all over Children's Hospital, and they're so slow moving. They're like, oh, that's a really cool idea. I'm like, no, reach out to every single FSHD patient you have in your registry, we need to activate all these, even if they've graduated from you in their past clients of yours. So it's really hard to get them moving. So one question that we do have is, can we work with the hospitals directly to release data without having any type of, affiliation to the patient, right? Just release the facts, not anything that would describe who this patient is, which would be another angle we could go at, going across the country to all the different children's hospitals to see how many we can get. The other thing that June did bring up, Allie, was the coding. When you're going to the doctor, make sure, do you remember what the code is? We can get it and share it. All your children's stuff should be coded as FSHD. And what's happening is that they're not coding. When they go in for treatments, they're not coding it for FSHD. And so when June was pulling all the information from hospitals about the number of patients it was astronomically low, which does not help us as these drugs go through the clinical trial pathways and then they reach the payer. It does not help prove the burden to the insurance companies when they say, well, it's only 16,000 people. Well, we're not paying for this drug. So we have to start working on making sure that the documentation of what we're getting for services is classified under FSHD. So when these information is pulled and we have to prove the burden on the insurance companies, that we show, like, you know, my daughter goes to PT 3 days a week. We will show, like, if she gets a therapy, she doesn't need 3 days a week. So this is a burden on you. She has to go for pulmonary and lung and hearing and eyes every single 6 months. I mean, we're spending the entire day at Children's. That's not cheap. I don't even know what the bill is, but it's got to be crazy expensive. And you're doing that twice a year. That goes away with the therapy. So these are the things that we have to prove in order to get insurance to pay. Because right now, if they were to actually get approved, it probably would not get approved by insurance. So if the FDA approves it, most likely it would be an out-of-pocket drug.
So I don't have that code with me, but when I publish this on out on email and in the Facebook page, I'll include the code. That's a good point. I had forgotten about the code.
I totally forgot
Because
about it.
it's a pretty new code, like within the last 5 years, right?
Yeah. Right,
So
and that's why a lot of hospitals don't know about it.
Okay, but in theory, if we forget the number, we ought to be able to say, can you please make sure this is coded as FSHD?
Correct.
Right,
They
yes.
should be able to find it. I mean, they're the ones with the master database, right?
Right.
Right.
But like you said, you're like Julie was saying, her neurologist was like, I don't know. Well, so yeah, we just need to make sure that there is a code. It's a new code. It hasn't been on my child's record before. Put it on there, please.
Yeah. You guys, it's really inspiring to hear how much you're doing and how hard you're pushing. Thank you, like, on behalf of the rest of us who are like the 228 or whatever others who are less vocal. That's awesome. And if we can do anything to support you guys, aside from the things you talked about, we'll get our kids in the registry, we'll sort of hound our doctors to code properly, sign up for the MOVE study, but just, you know, let us know.
And just spread the word to other parents, get them involved. If you're getting anything out of these meetings, tell them that they're worth attending and that the more numbers we have, the more we can move the needle. Allie has got an amazing voice to focus on this. She is working her butt off and I am so thankful for her. She just called me in when she needs some harassing in different ways. So she keeps me moving. But there's many more things that she has that other parents can do as she's going through her journeys and working through all of this. So one of them is just support, and continuing to show up at these meetings where we can, as a team, figure out how do we do this for our kids? Because that's what this is all about.
Right. And we are going to be asking you for some records soon, hopefully.
Sure.
And that's what we need. We're going to need buy-in from the parents to send in records so that we can, once we find a company, send them in, and then hopefully we'll have a lot of data and we can get this done. And Kristen has a lot of talents that I do not have, and she's the one that's in everybody's ear, and she can talk to all these pharmaceuticals. So, she does a lot. It's not like just me. It's not. I can't do half the stuff she does. So, but we need you. We need all the parents, and we're all in this together. And however we can help. And again, if you can just, if you just need someone to call and say, this is happening to my kid and I don't understand it. Have you gone through it? And we can just talk that way. I'm happy to do that too. We're all just here for each other, and things come up when Kristen and I talk all the time, like they want to do this surgery. Did you do it? How do you feel about this? I mean, we need that community to say, you've been through it or maybe something like it. And would you do it again? And how did it turn out? That's valuable information. So,
yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've been here about, I think John just came on, but we've been about an hour. If we have no more questions or any more comments, I appreciate you guys being here, and you'll be hearing from us, and get your kid in the MOVE study and we'll press forward.
Will do. All right, I got to run, but thank you so much.
Yeah. Next month is geneticist. It's going to be super exciting.
Cool. All right, I'll look for it.
All right. Thank you
Bye.
guys so much. John.